show him JoAnn on the left here, Brian. JoAnn's a cross-dresser. Is she gay? She's not gay? She's anatomically a man, you know. You know that. All right, here's now wait a minute. Here's Ruby Rims, Mr. Ruby Rims. Mr. Female impersonator for 17 years. Is Ruby gay? No? All right, show him Eve Golden. Eve Golden is a transsexual. Is Eve gay? Nick DiTullio is here, also a transsexual. All right, you from female to male. And finally, here is Lynn Edward Harris, a hermaphrodite. You know what that means? You don't know what that means? I'll tell you everything I know about this. It'll take me 10 seconds. Lynn Harris was born and raised a girl. You won the Miss Newport Beach contest in 1968 in good old Orange County, California. Boy, wait till they hear this. You lived as a woman to the age of 29, and then you switched to living as a man. He has the anatomical characteristics of both a man and a woman. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Are you thrilled you came to this show today? Or
Yeah.
You want tickets for tomorrow? Here's what's not so funny. These live, irreplaceable sons and daughters of God, human beings, Paul, want you to know, among other things, that that's exactly what they are, human beings, and there's an awful lot of nervousness attending to their particular personal situations, which provoke a lot of prejudice. The whole point of, the whole fuel of prejudice is ignorance and fear, and we're hoping we can do something about that ignorance today. Let's start with Lynn, the hermaphrodite, right? You have, first of all, you noticed as a child that you have a vagina and a clitoris which began to develop into a stunted penis. How am I doing so far in our adult program here?
Well, so far, so good.
All right, well,
I
help us
have, I was born with a biological anomaly. It's called Stein-Leventhal syndrome, and it's common to about 1 in 10,000 newborns. And I have a very stunted set of internal female organs, and as I went through puberty, my external male genitalia began to develop.
Excuse me, you went through puberty as a girl. You're a high school girl.
Yes, but I never developed the curved torso or the bust development or the monthly cycle that girls did. All
right, you were about to say, as you went through...
And meanwhile, my voice dropped lower than most boys in my class, and I began shaving from age 15.
Huh. Do you have ovaries?
They're so small and cyst-encrusted, they're hardly worth mentioning.
Well, but...
And my womb is...
Well, we weren't asking you to enter a contest here.
No.
But...
I don't think I'd win the prize
It's all right to laugh.
Anyway.
These are adults, too. It's all right. Humor will get us through. It's not an unimportant point here. I mean, this is a part of the very real dilemma in which you found yourself as a child, early adolescent, hardly prepared to deal with this kind of pressure. We should say your father was a character actor. You grew up in Hollywood, didn't you?
Yes, that's true.
Your father was a character actor and not altogether that home that much in the kind of irregular life that most actors lead. So,
right.
Your mother, as you tell us, was a moral Roman Catholic, and you wanted to be sent to the doctor, didn't you? You saw what was going on or felt it or...
I was very curious as a child. I knew I was different inside and out, and all I wanted was to get some answers because I was not developing typically as a normal female, and yet I was having the urges of a young boy. So it was after a couple visits to specialists, and my mother, frankly, she said, let nature take its course.
Well, she obviously had to be scared to death. I mean, come on.
Well, she was, and...
she didn't want to deal with this, right? Isn't that what...
She didn't want to deal with it, but both my parents wanted only daughters and no sons. So it turns out I'm the son that she never had and never wanted.
She lives?
Yes.
And how's it going with Mom?
She and I have come to a reckoning, And I did live as a female for the first 29 years, and for the past 10 years I've lived as a man. And she chooses to consider that I do not exist these past 10 years, and that to live with my old portfolio and pictures as a girl, that is how she wishes to deal with it.
You're her daughter, and don't argue about it.
She at one time told me, Phil, you're still, after 29 years living as a female, why bother to change? You're still a she, you're
Right.
still my daughter.
But I don't want to mislead this audience. You still see her, right? Or is it a
Yes,
total...
we speak on occasion.
I see. So it's not a
Yeah.
total estrangement.
Oh,
then.
no. No.
Now let's just get back to the anatomy here. You have the legacy of how shall we put, the legacy of ovaries. You know,
Yeah.
you say they're small and they're immature, whatever you want to say.
It's very infantile development of the male and female organs both.
You have had no surgery at all. You've transected nothing.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have a uterus? Is there any...
Yes, a normal size uterus would be the size of a pear, and mine, it was said to be the size of a walnut. A normal size ovary would be the size of an almond. Mine's the size of a pea.
Did you flow? Did you have any mens? Did you have menses when you were 13 or whenever?
I had very rare occasional spotty bleeding, but it didn't constitute a monthly menstrual cycle, ever.
And no breast?
No, to this day, my chest remains flat as it is today.
Right. You're proud of that?
I'm very proud of it.
You want to be a man?
At one point, I tried to costume my exterior. As nature began virilizing my body and I became more masculinized naturally, I said, no, I've been raised as a female. This is my role in society, and I'm going to do my best and join the beauty contests and win the college scholarship and all this.
Yeah.
And so as I was costuming the exterior, people would say, well, you really are a man in drag, aren't you? And so I went through another 10 years of hearing all of these comments until finally I crossed the gender line cold turkey.
Right.
And a very close friend of mine who's an intuitive counselor said, I know you've been so unhappy living as a female. Could you do any worse living as a man in society? And I started to shake
Eureka.
so violent and cry. I said, it never crossed my mind that I had this option.
So you came out of an imaginary closet, in a
I was
sense.
the most self-deluded person alive.
I appreciate very much your honesty, Lynn. And with time getting the best of us here, it's not too many yes and no answers with this issue. I understand that. Just a couple brief. Show them pictures. Maybe already did, and I wasn't watching the Donahue show. So let's show them again. Show this audience. There you are. You're 17 here. Is that
No,
so?
this
What are you
was
here?
age 29,
So
27 rather. It was 2 years before I elected to live as a social male.
This was 1977 then.
That's right.
But are there others? Can you show us? There you are.
This was 1967.
at age 17.
Yes.
And
Costa
you
Mesa
missed-
Junior Miss.
Costa Mesa Junior Miss.
And I concurrently was Miss Tinsel, voted by
Do you have that? There you are, Miss
the
Tinsel.
mayor and the city council for their Christmas festivities.
All right. Don't leave us, Lynn Edward Harris. This audience wants to talk to you. First, let me say, before we talk to these other guests, Lynn Hubschman is here. You are family counselor for the Gender Identity Clinic. This is not that rare.
That's right.
How many for hermaphrodites? One in what?
Oh, very, very small percentage, about 1 in
I would
20.
say 1 in 10,
10,000.
1 in 5 to 10,000,
Right.
and if it's an extremely rare case, it would be 1 in 170,000.
But usually they're corrected at birth, Phil, and many times
Corrected how? Right?
if an infant is born with a clitoris that's enlarged that looks like a penis, it's usually amputated to make that child a female.
Does it work?
Usually, because the child is then raised as a female and doesn't have to go through much of this.
Is there a biohormonal chemical?
But if it's the brain chemistry that dictates
Sometimes.
one thing, and the penis could be 10 inches
True.
That's
long
true.
or
That's
completely
true. That's
excised,
true. That's
what is
true.
the brain chemistry, the life sex of
Well,
the person?
that's a
But
question.
the hormones influence the brain chemistry, and the
Exactly.
hormones are anatomically originated
That's
in
right.
some cases.
Yes,
That's right.
of course.
But
You
it's a
can't
gender.
Yeah, let's just understand this.
It's a gender issue.
Okay, I get it. It's also a terribly personal psychiatric
all of these issues will be impacted upon by the society and the family
Right.
and the way in which the individual suffers,
Right.
because all of these people suffer.
Now let's go to school now on reproductive biology. First 6 weeks in the uterus, we are
All
girls.
female.
Girls.
All female.
XX.
XX.
Then comes 6 weeks and the big hormones come. You know all this, huh? I wish I had time for my whole lecture, but you know, it's... Now comes the hormones in 6 weeks, and for boys comes the testosterone and other things, turns into... The vaginal area begins to develop a penis.
More difficult to be a male than a female.
More complicated, isn't
More
it?
complicated.
So we shouldn't be surprised when we see other things that go awry in utero, cleft
Exactly.
palate, all the things that can happen, the failure to this,
Right.
that for some of us, we get the cellular division a little bit mutated and goes awry somewhere, and some people are born hermaphrodite where you've got the actual chromosomal legacy of both male and
Yes.
female.
Yes, but there are still questions about a lot of it.
How can your parents make a decision at birth whether you're going to be male or female? I think that's going to cause a lot of problems for the child when they grow up, like you.
In 1950, if there was any ambiguity about the newborn's genitalia, any question at all, they just threw a pink blanket over it and labeled it female.
That's right.
And then let us grow up and let nature take its course and do with our lives as we may. And the doctors just would wash their hands of it and say, let some other doctor
It
deal
was
with it.
easier to do it surgically.
We'll be back in a moment. Let's talk to you, Nick. Nick DeTulio, transsexual. You were a woman for how long? You completed your surgery 5 years ago, that's all.
I started 15 years ago, and it was, or I started 17 years ago, and it was completed 5 years ago.
Uh-huh. You look very male, mustache and all. So you lived as a female for how long?
For 28 years.
You, all through those 28 years, you wanted to be a man. Do I understand that?
Yes.
And you have, as you've established, the surgery, and it's more than one procedure, isn't it?
Yes, several steps.
Uh-huh. So you, I assume, did you surgically remove your breasts, or was that done hormonally?
That was done surgically.
Surgically?
Yes.
You had a bilateral mastectomy?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Did you have a hysterectomy?
Yes.
The ovaries gone, too?
Everything.
Uh-huh. And you had a reconstructed vaginal area, then. Is that right?
Yes.
Uh-huh. As well as a surgically constructed male genitalia.
Yes. Everything you have, I have.
You see, if you applaud this kind of thing.
Bill, I certainly...
You can't make a baby, tell him, Nick.
That's true.
Okay. Well, I'm not making fun of you. I'm just, we got to know this. Nobody's able to do that yet.
Not yet.
You could have conceived as a woman, though, right? You had all the...
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But I was sterile.
You were sterile.
Yes.
You, as a hermaphrodite, you were sterile. Very good. Are you gay, Nick?
No, I am not.
No, you're not. You're erotically attracted to women.
Yes.
Are you single?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Have there been women in your life since this time? It's, there's no constitutional obligation to answer these questions.
Yes, there has been.
There has been, and it was a mutually satisfying relationship. So?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as you know, you're sitting next to Eve. Eve went the other way.
Yes.
Okay, boy, you're going to need mirrors for this one.
We wish in our clinic that we could plug the right parts in the right people. It would make it much easier.
Yes, it
but
would.
We can't.
It's a lot more complicated
Yep.
than that. All right, Eve, me and you completed surgery in '78 when you were 21 years old, right?
That's right.
So you spent your first 21 years as a boy, young man, adolescent.
I started cross-dressing when I was 20. And it's very important to cross-dress for at least a year before surgery to make sure that that's right for you. So I had the surgery shortly after my 21st birthday.
Okay. All your life you felt this as a kid? I don't
Always, as far back as I can remember.
know. And what a decision, surgery.
It was never a decision. From the minute I heard that it was even possible, as a child. I knew that was for me. And some people who say, well, if you were attracted towards men and you thought you were a woman, why didn't you just not have the surgery and live your life as a gay man? But it's important to realize that who you are and who you sleep with are two very different things. Sleeping with men does not make you a woman. Sleeping with farm animals doesn't make you a sheep. It's
true.
All within your own mind who you are.
We do humor when we do the surgery as well.
We do humor, yes. You transplant the humor.
Right.
Eve, one of the points you want to make, you're tired. You feel that, first of all, let me say what we already know, having discussed this before on our show. This is really big league, and in some cases, certainly early on, heroic surgery, and an enormously courageous decision on the part of apparently countless numbers of men and women around the world. This is real. This is very personal. It involves the soul, the spirit, the personality, the emotions, everything. And among other things, you're tired about the kooky presentation of your own particular personal medical profile that is presented on television. How am I doing?
I understand how it is a bizarre situation from somebody who's never gone through it. I appreciate the humor of it. A lot of it was funny, and you have to be able to laugh at it. What I read in a magazine once where transsexuals were described as exotic, otherworldly beings, and I thought to myself, I'm about as exotic and otherworldly as Velveeta. I mean, I'm a very normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday person, and that's something people, I think, should realize, that we're not these bizarre creatures from outer space.
Right. And your erotic interest is in the male of the species.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And apparently always was.
Yes.
Through adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have thought you were gay.
When I was little, I did. I didn't understand the difference until I started doing some reading on my own.
Uh-huh.
Counseling helps with that. I mean,
Yeah,
we
really
have
does.
people in counseling for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that we work through the crazies, the psychotics, the people who are homophobic. We really weed out inappropriate people for surgery.
There are a lot of gay people, unfortunately, who are not comfortable with being gay within themselves and feel that a sex change would be right for them.
Right.
And it's more important that they learn how to be comfortable within themselves for what they are.
So you have then voluntarily submitted to a surgery that is essentially castration.
Yes, basically.
And have you enhanced your breasts with just pads, huh?
No, nothing. Hormones takes care of all that.
Okay. So biochemically, you got breasts.
Yes.
How, did you do electrolysis or any of that stuff?
Yes, I went through electrolysis for a few years, but basically the
So
surgery...
you have no
was all
beard
I've
then?
done. No beard.
No beard. All right.
Just shaved off a full beard a month ago.
Yeah, well,
That
and
I-
you've got a
that I-
very substantial mustache there, too.
Yes, and thank you. I had always disavowed the need for plastic surgery because of the possible risks of mutilation, disfigurement, or foreign implants. It wasn't necessary, and it wasn't my objective.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Ruby Rims, I don't know how you're going to follow this. I'll tell you, this ought to be easy. You're a female impersonator. You have been for 17 years. You do it for entertainment. So, you know, that's why you do it, and
have a great time. Mostly everyone that comes to see me enjoys it. And basically, if you were to ask me if I were gay or whatever, my answer to you would be, what difference does it make?
oh, come on, we want to know. We're curious. It's all right. It doesn't necessarily bespeak of prejudice. We are trying to understand this, although I respect very much the reason for your statement. You know, we don't ask that. We're not so curious about so-called straights. You do this as entertaining. You liked it. You're a male person who has no interest anatomically. You're a male person. You're comfortable in your male body.
Mm-hmm.
You spend most of your time, what, in a suit and tie? I don't know.
No, in jeans and a sweatshirt.
Okay. But you are a gay person, if I...
I am a gay person.
Uh-huh. And you're next to JoAnn, who is...
the real pervert on the panel.
The real pervert. You got to have one pervert for show, or you can't survive out here. JoAnn, you are a cross-dresser. What's the difference between a cross-dresser and a female impersonator?
Actually, I'm a transvestite. I cross-dress, Ruby cross-dresses. There's some people in the audience who cross-dress. Cross-dressing is an activity. What makes me different, what makes me a transvestite, is that I do it for psychological satisfaction. I do it for erotic reasons. I do it for emotional pleasure.
This anatomical man, take his picture, Brian, is married and has children. Married to a woman and has biologically fathered children that, yes, they know and they love him very much. And I assume that occasionally you'll go, you know, out dressed like this, huh?
Oh, yes. I go out a lot. I do.
How about you go out with your wife?
Yes.
No kidding.
Been out with my wife in other cities.
Yeah. Does she didn't know when she married you?
No, she did not.
Well, this was a pretty big punch in the nose here. How did she do with it?
It started out at Halloween, which is very typical for a lot of...
My birthday.
Standard fare, holy day of obligation for a transvestite.
Yeah.
Every Halloween, I would get dressed up in drag, and it began to really annoy her. And one Halloween, we came home and we had a big argument, and what she was afraid of was that I was gay, and that at some point in the relationship, I was going to pack up and leave with some guy.
Right.
And so for the first time, I began to really open up and tell her how I felt, and that I had a need to do this, and that in fact, I would do it when she was not around. It wasn't just Halloween. I was doing it on weekends when she was working and things like that.
And there's an erotic kick accompanying the experience. Huh?
Because that's when I started at puberty, and there was a lot of eroticism attached to it, so that's reinforcement.
Right. Now let's understand this. You want to say, among other things, as a transvestite, that there are untold thousands of your colleagues out there.
Probably hundreds of thousands.
And you don't wait in the bushes and molest children.
No.
Not all, but I assume you believe the majority of the males who cross-dress are straight.
Heterosexuals, that's correct.
Many of them have children.
Many are married, have children.
And you're here to say this is not a moral issue, you know, that
No.
you can, like every other person, behave in an immoral way, but this particular consensual circumstance injures and usurps the rights of nobody. Do I got it? Have I got this?
Well, we have to be careful about partners, because partners can be very offended about a cross-dressing husband. But
Yes, they can.
generally, the activity does not harm anyone.
So I assume your counsel would be, if you're a cross-dresser, not to marry the girl until you tell her?
I would counsel someone to be open before they get married, yes.
With all of these issues, it would be very unfair to have a partner that you cared about and
To
really
come
not
down-
disclose.
Yeah.
Although in my practice, I have a transsexual who is married who never told his wife. We have a number of transsexuals who are homosexual, but functioning the way they want to function, and why not?
Are you there, caller?
Yes.
You have a brief comment.
Yes, Phil, I would just like to say that maybe not the men that do it for their jobs, but the men that dress like women for their own personal self, they've got to have some kind of homosexual tendencies. He says he does it for psychological reasons.
He says no.
I have never been attracted to another man. Never, ever.
Why would you want to be dressed like a woman if you weren't? I mean, it's just really weird. I mean, in order to want to dress like
Yes,
a woman...
it is really weird.
What's the matter? I got a break here. What's the matter? Yeah.
There are advantages. You can share clothes. The budget is better.
Yeah, sit down. We got to wait a minute. All right, I'll give you a chance. I got a break. I'm coming back. We'll be back in just a moment. Yes. Yes.
I'd like to ask the one with the red blouse on.
Yes, on the
Did you
left.
always have beautiful legs like that?
Talk about JoAnn?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, I got these from my mother.
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to know from JoAnn how your children adjust to this. Do they know? Do they get abuse, criticism?
I have a boy and a girl. My daughter is like totally accepting. She has no problem at all.
How old is
She is 14 and a half. My son is 16. And while he accepts the fact that I'm a cross-dresser, he doesn't like that I go out, that I go out of the house. I leave the house, and so we have a lot of rules and regulations about how I leave the house and when I come home or how I come home.
Yeah, I'd like to address this to the two cross-dressers. Have you two ever taken a real close look in the mirror? 'Cause they're very unattractive.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to tell you, boys, but the one does it for entertainment. I think that's great. If you're out there entertaining people, that's a ball. well, that's a little different. Like, how do I explain to my children about, you know, people like you? Like, you want to consider yourself normal, and it's hard for us to consider.
Yeah, that's the whole
I
point.
never said I was normal.
Oh, so then don't ask us to consider
no
you
one
as
in this
normal.
room is normal, because there is no such thing as normal.
I want to know what do you do about work? I mean, this takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. Do you go to work like this? Do you make a living? Does your employers know that, you know, the story behind each one of you?
This is what I do for a living. I work as a female impersonator. If I can answer your question, you said we're not that attractive. Well, that may be true, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so they say. And another thing, not everybody is that pretty. It's what's up here in your mind, not what's here, and also what's here.
But it's almost a compulsion.
Let me get those work. Eve, what's the story? Work.
Oh, well,
Employment.
until this airs, no one at work knew about me.
Nick.
Now,
I'm sorry, you wanted to say Eve.
oh, I did say that I went to college for 2 years as a man. I took a semester off, had the operation, came back as a woman. And a lot of people who met me either did not know about me, had no idea, or the students were very, very accepting of me.
Nick?
There's no problem at work. I started out as Nick, where I'm working.
You got your job as a man.
Yes.
And Lynn Edward Harris, how's it going for you in terms of employment?
Quite well. I think it's more important to my boss. He's more intrigued with my former bisexuality, I think, and I don't actually know that he knows about my first 29 years.
Do any of you have siblings?
Yes.
I have a sister, an older sister, and when I first told her about it, I was worried. And kind of a light bulb went on over her head, and she said, oh, that explains an awful lot. She knew there was something different about me, but didn't know quite what it was. So we're still very close.
Are you there? I'm glad you waited, caller. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, the man, he just said he was a bisexual, but I was just wondering if he was when he was a woman, if he just had sex with men, and now that he's a man, if he has sex with just women, and which he really prefers.
Yes.
Thank you for calling in, yes. When I lived as a woman, I preferred sleeping with men and a few women in between. And now that I've changed my social gender role, my sex preferences have not changed, and I prefer men exclusively.
So that you would describe yourself then as a gay male?
I would say a gay lifestyle would be a fitting term.
Yes, and you wanted to add.
Well, I want to say that
As the family counsel for the Gender Identity Clinic in Philadelphia, it's fascinating that we have this kind of discipline.
Right.
Gender identity, you got to go.
most of my work is with marriage and family counseling, and most of the most terrible cases I work with are heterosexuals, so I want to go on record saying that.
Really?
With transsexuals, with whom I have the most experience, the family really is crucial. And Eve, for example, had both a grandmother and a mother who were very supportive. Now imagine 2 generations being understanding of this process. It's unbelievable. So family is crucial, and it's a compulsion. They cannot live their lives in the role in which they were born.
Are you there, caller?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, Mr. Harris, now when you, at 29, when you changed over, was it hard to find help from a doctor or a psychiatrist or something? I was just wondering, was it hard, or did you just did it?
It was very difficult in the fact that a few psychiatrists I was obligated to see were very unsympathetic to my case.
Let me just say, what was the year of your surgery, the beginning of your surgery?
I must correct you, I've had no surgery whatsoever. But it was 4 years after living in a official legal sexual limbo that I approached the Superior Court and was able to get my original birth certificate changed from Lynn Elizabeth Harris female to Lynn Edward Harris male. And it's presumed to be the precedent in California, if not the nation, because I've had no surgery, and it's on the basis of my unusual medical history.
Your surgery began in 1970-something?
Yes. But
70 what?
1970, 72.
Early 70s,
Yeah.
and yours?
78.
And this was the decade when this kind of procedure began to...
Yeah, really, it was, the 70s were the time when it was the social programs were still being funded more by the government.
We only started in '66 doing it in America.
Wasn't Johns Hopkins very much
Hopkins
in
was
it?
the first, and that's not such a long time
So
ago.
I assume you can get a sex change operation in just about any state in the Union today, then?
No, there are only about 10 clinics and some private ones throughout the country.
And
there are
we'll
about 10,000 transsexuals, by the way, in the United States.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
To be part of the audience, write Donahue Tickets, care of NBC, New York, New York, 10112.
This is for Rube. Rube, suppose you're in the elevator and this gentleman walks in and he takes a fancy to your feathers and he and he invites you for a drink.
An hour show. Let's go. What would you do?
Would you tell him you want to talk about something first, or would you have a couple of drinks and then surprise him?
He'd probably need a couple of drinks first.
Yeah.
No, I would. I'd probably have a couple of drinks with him. I mean, first of all, I think in my case, he'd be pretty stupid not to know that I wasn't a man.
You're not trying to fool anybody.
I'm not trying to fool
In the elevator.
anybody. What I'm doing is I'm having fun.
Over here.
And this is what I like to do. But I'm not trying to make you think that I'm a woman, because you'd have to be pretty stupid to think that.
Over here. Yeah, briefly.
Yeah. The first case I ever heard about was Christine Jorgensen. Right. Now, this has been going on for years, right?
Well,
now, what happened before
it was in
Christine Jorgensen case?
1939 that the first medical record in Germany of a transsexual operation. Christine Jorgensen went public and was done in 1952 in Denmark, and that's what sort of exposed the issue.
Over here.
The man in the red shirt, I'd like to know how you can do that to your children. If you were my father, I'd be ashamed of you.
Because I raised my children to understand that not everybody is exactly the same. So they respect differences, and they know that I love them.
One other thing that you might mention is that many transvestites just wear lingerie.
How do you make them understand between a man and a woman when you're supposed to be their father and you're walking around with a dress on?
I don't dress like this all the time. I have a regular job. I go to work in a three-piece suit. I hang around the house in jeans and a T-shirt. I work on the car. I cut the lawn. I do all the things that a typical male does.
You drink like beer?
No.
No.
Scotch.
To Lynn, how do you function sexually if you say you're a gay male and you go to a gay bar? Do you surprise them once you get them home, or, you know, how do you handle it?
Well, I'm not the least bit promiscuous, but I, pardon me, would be more of a receiver, I suppose you would say.
Yeah.
Is there a support group or peer support group for you? Because if you came to my school, I know a lot of people would shun you.
As a matter of fact, some of you do speak in high school, do you not?
Yes, I speak nationwide TV and radio and at colleges and medical trade conventions.
There are support groups throughout the country for families as well.
Eve, did you say that your coworkers don't know that
I actually told one of them, and she thought it was a practical joke. I had to bring in an old photograph.
How do you think they're going to take it?
Most people I have found are absolutely fascinating. I can dine out on it for a year.
Eve and JoAnn. Have you ever had a blood test done to find out whether or not your hormones were, the female hormones were elevated?
I just turned 40 plus, and I had a complete blood work done, and it's totally normal for a male.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of that.
I want to know, what makes you two think you can play God with your body?
Basically, I think that this just goes to prove that what you are. Nothing can change that. That some trick of nature can't make you a man or a woman.
I think it might be a prenatal hormonal imbalance, and that's why mothers suffer dramatically when they have children who are transsexual.
Oh.
But there's no proof of that.
I would like to say that basically religion was not at all, had no influence on me whatsoever.
Yes.
I want to ask Lynn, if when you had a female identity you were attracted to male, what made you change your sexual identity now if you're still attracted to male?
I just followed nature's course, and it seemed like the more comfortable and reasonable thing to do to live as a man. But my sex preferences haven't changed, oddly enough.
Nick and Eve, I don't understand how you can be, like,
if you were born into a man's body or born into a woman's body, how you know you're like the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know? How do you know that you're a man?
Because I was born into a man's body, so I assume I'm a man.
But you assume, okay? Well, my mind does not assume.
I know, but my question was why? What made you kind of think, oh, well, this might be a
Nobody
mistake?
really knows. And one of the things that you're confusing here that has to be straightened out is gender and sex. Gender is what the culture says you are. Little boys are taught to be big boys. Little girls put on their mother's high heels. But if you don't feel that way inside, you can't do it. You're bucking nature.
Are you there?
That's the problem.
God forbid we're castrated in an accident, I don't want that should happen to you, or if you woke up tomorrow morning and looked in the mirror and you saw a woman looking back at you, you know within yourself you're a man. That wouldn't change that.
Okay, my question though is, what made you decide to do this? How did you know your
decision at all? It was always something that I knew.
I know,
within
but why
myself.
is my...
It was something that you have to do if you want to survive in life.
We'll be back in a moment.
My question is directed to JoAnn. I have laryngitis. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, your children may be very well adjusted and comfortable with the fact that you cross-dress. How do their friends feel about it and their friends' parents? Because, well, you can make them comfortable. Society's not always ready.
My children are well aware of the potential consequences, so their friends don't know.
JoAnn, when you go out with your wife, who gets picked up first?
I'm not going to answer
You look
that.
a lot like a woman. Have you ever completely surprised a man, like if you've been in a relationship where all of a sudden...
Who's Eve now? To whom are you speaking?
Eve, isn't this Eve right here? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Has she ever what?
Surprised a man. You look like a woman.
Thank you.
And do you ever tell men afterwards, you know, when does it come out that you used to be a man?
I think you should tell them before you wind up in bed. But basically, I have had sex. I'd like to say I have had sexual relationships with people who had absolutely no
JoAnn,
idea.
when you dress like that today, what bathroom would you use, the male or the female?
I would use the ladies' room. I'd cause a riot in the men's room.
JoAnn, I think the reason a lot of people are angry with you
The reason a lot of people are angry with you, JoAnn, is...
It's because you came on and said you were the pervert, and I think we all want to know, what do you mean by that?
It was a joke. I don't think...
It was a joke.
Yeah.
I just want to direct this to all of you. I was wondering, when you have a relationship with opposite sex or the same sex or whatever, and you tell them that you cross-dress or you were once the opposite sex or whatever, don't you scare off a lot of people, and how do they deal with that?
I think in my case, it's very, very difficult, even more than doing a nationwide show like this. To say how I'm built is one thing, but I don't feel obligated to divulge how my parents and my pediatrician assigned me in my first 29 years. That's immaterial as far as I'm concerned.
Also, it does narrow down the field quite a bit, but the ones who are left over are really worth it.
Yes.
Yes, to the young lady in the purple and the feathers. How much money do you make?
I'm not a lady. I'm a man.
How much money do you make posing as a young lady?
How many? Is
it a good living?
Usually a performance from $500 to $600.
To even Nick.
So get your boa and let's get going.
You could do a great Aretha Franklin.
This question's to Eve and Nick. They say that men have a lot easier than women. Have either of you found it to be so?
You mean basically in the job market, things like that? I have no basis for comparison, really. I had the surgery when I was 21, so I've only been in the job market and living as a woman, so I really...
We've only done females to males in the numbers that we are now recently because the surgery has been improved. It was not good surgery for a long time.
As a matter of fact, there's more requests for...
Male to female because it's easier and cheaper. It costs
Is
maybe
that the reason, or is there a...
No, it's much easier.
So you think
it's one operation.
You think there are as many transsexuals who want to go
Female
each
to
way,
male.
different? Both.
Although males are more prized in the society.
Yes.
Film male, female, black, white. This show has sure helped me to accept people.
Well,
where
I
they
do
are.
thank you very much for saying that. Hey! You can come back, and we'll be back in just a moment. Lynn Edward Edward Harris, you remember the hermaphrodite. That is to say, anatomically speaking, evidence of both sexes reside in his body. And he's written a book. He has a manuscript. More lives than one. More lives than one. Here's the honest story of a man who's really seen the world, as we might say. And I guess it's legal for me to tell you, he is looking for a publisher. You better get the plug in here, Mr. Ruby Rims. It's legal to do that. Go ahead.
I'm performing regularly at 88, 228 West 10th Street in the Village. Come and see me.
Very good. We'll bring Grandma with us. Yes.
My statements for the whole panel, I want to commend you for your courage of your convictions to be what you want to be.
I'd like to know if Eve or Nick would like to get married at any point or adopt children or...
Is that me? Oh, marriage is certainly an option. I cannot have children, but I could if I wanted to, yeah.
I'd like to ask Eve, Nick, and Lynn, have you had friends who knew you before and after, and how have they reacted to you?
I only lost one friend and one relative, and we weren't that crazy about each other beforehand.
I've lost countless number of relatives and friends over what I presume to be a positive elected choice.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but one again.
I know what Ruby does for a living, but I'd like to know what the other people do for a living.
Oh, I'm a writer, nonfiction.
I'm an engineer.
Engineer? Engineer.
All of these people speak very well, and I wish them all the best in their future
Well,
lives.
thank you. Aren't you nice? Yes.
I'm curious if JoAnn wears lingerie when she makes love to her wife.
Sometimes I do.
Yes. Yes.
JoAnn, what does your family portrait look like?
Pardon me?
What's your family portrait look like? Yeah.
JoAnn, you said at the beginning of the show that you get some sort of erotic pleasure from dressing like that. Could you explain that, please?
That's because when it started for me, I was going through puberty, and it was attached to masturbation. So there was a erotic reinforcement of the cross-dressing. I am not aroused right now.
That's great. Yes.
Does your medical insurance pay for this?
Does this insurance, is this covered? Is the transsexual surgery covered?
It's not covered by medical assistance. It may be covered by Blue Cross Blue Shield in part.
Yes.
Eve, if I ever met a woman who used to be a man, would I be able to tell?
No, you would not.
You would
It's
not.
very difficult to tell.
You want in here? What is it?
I'd like to ask a question to Nick. I just can't believe you were a full female, and you have that mustache. Is that from hormone treatments?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
The answer to your question is yes. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I had a question for the cross-dresser.
Yeah.
I'm sure he must realize that this isn't a normal hobby. Does he ever stop and think why he does this? Maybe something in his childhood brought this on?
It's not a hobby. The thought is that it is both prenatally predisposed and environment after I was born.
You said you were gay, and that you are not gay, but you like other men. Do other men look at you, like are attracted to you?
Yes.
JoAnn, do you share clothes with your wife?
Yeah.
I have a question for her. What does your parents think about this, your in-laws?
My parents and in-laws don't know.
And we'll be back in a moment.
For a transcript of today's show, send $3 to Donahue Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 1007, or call 212-227-READ.
Mixing love with laughter. Meet romantic couples from Cheers, Amen, and Coach on the next Donahue from L.A.
Lynn Hubschman of the Gender Identity Clinic in Philadelphia. Tell them about the...
Penile implant. It's put into the penis, and it can erect. It has saline solution usually.
But it's done mechanically.
It's done mechanically. You never want to be in a crowded elevator.
But...
Yeah. We've heard good things about these sex change operations. Have there ever been people who felt that it was a mistake?
Very few that we've...
Services provided and promotional fees paid by the following.
Sugar Twin, the diet sweetener that costs less, tastes great, and sweetens perfectly. Sugar Twin, sweet taste, sweeter price.
Making furniture the right way and making it affordable. That's Broyhill.
Broyhill brings the good life home
belong to you. The Drake offers an exciting weekend in New York at a special price. The only Swiss hotel on Park Avenue. For reservations, call 800-DRAKE-NEW YORK or 212-421-0900.
Do you feel your lives are complete now?
Yes, I do.
The preceding program was pre-recorded.